Okay, well, welcome to our latest lunchtime talk. This talk is part of the Norfolk Archaeological Trust, its Centenary and Beyond Project, which is called NAT 100 for short. It's supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and the project is helping the Norfolk Archaeological Trust in partnership with the Norfolk Record Office to celebrate its first 100 years and improve its resilience for the future. More information about the project and further events can be found on the website for the Norfolk Archaeological Trust. You can also help to sustain NAT's future by signing up as a member or by making a donation, and information on how to do so can be found on the website. I will pass you over and welcome Andrew, who will be talking about Bloodgate Hill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who are of a religious bent, it's Ash Wednesday, apparently. And for you romantic people, it's Valentine's Day. What I forgot to do before coming out was look in my Cheney date book to see how often the two combine. But it's not that often, so it's a bit different to most Wednesdays. I'm going to talk about just one place, an Iron Age hill fort in South Creake, with the strange name of Bloodgate Hill. And I should say from the outset, of course, that I'm a medievalist. So any prehistorians here, or even Romanists, beware and don't be too nasty to me. The name intrigues me, first of all, that as far as I can tell, it is not an ancient name, Bloodgate, although the elements, of course, are gate, meaning road or way, blood meaning blood. When I was asked to give this talk, I gave, in an email, I gave a completely wrong answer, because I thought that I was talking about a place in Suffolk, which I'll mention at the end, which shares the same blood element. I assume it is probably a medieval name, but does not occur, as far as I can tell, in any of the early documents on South Creake. It's worth mentioning also, of course, don't think it's relevant, but it could be, that South Creake, the Creek element, is one of the very few names that is not Old English or Anglo-Saxon or Germanic. It's thought to be, I think pretty definitely is, from an old Welsh word that means a cliff or a considerable eminence. And it's been pointed out that as you go through the valley of the Burn in either direction, you'll notice off to the east, there is a considerable rise, a sharper rise than is normal for Norfolk, if you can use that expression, as you go through, well, really between the North and South Creeks off to the east. So that might have been what they're referring to, or it's possible that it's referring to the upland on either side of the valley generally, but in which case you'd think there'd be more places with the same name. It's interestingly the same as Creake in Yorkshire and quite a few other places as well. Right. Now, I expect most of you have been to visit the site, or if you haven't, I hope I won't put you off, and you must go there. One thing that it comes pretty clear is that it's not a fantastically obvious site from the ground, I have to say. Many people can think of earthworks, archaeological earthworks, as being huge things. And actually quite often, when I've been with lay people, they point to hills of considerable size and entirely natural origin and ask me whether they are archaeological or not. This particular one, you'll see very little sign of earthwork at all. But nevertheless, from the air, as you can see from this shot, there is clearly something visible. And some views from the air show a ploughed out bank or flattened bank, and the others show crop marks of the ditch. And we'll be looking at various different ways in which this site has been observed and recorded. One of the earliest, well, the earliest pictorial representation is in this map of about 1610 or so. And it's one of what would have been 3 maps produced by William Hayward, a well-known cartographer of the late 16th, early 17th century. And it in fact joins up with another map also in the NRO. The third one, which takes up another part of the parish, big parish is South Creake, is yet to be found. And interestingly enough, and some of you know this already, I'm sure, that this map was pulled out of a rubbish bin in a solicitor's office by a friend of mine who worked in the office, a metal detector person, interestingly enough. So a good find altogether, and not done with his machine. Okay, and the next one is just a detail which shows the site in question, looking wonderfully green. And that greenness is most likely to be a combination of a bit of bank and ditch. This particular hill fort has only got a single bank and a single ditch, and many, of course, are much more complicated than that. We don't have them in Norfolk, and I am going to talk about other sites as well. But one thinks of places like Maiden Castle in Dorset, with its multiple banks and ditches. This one would have been really rather singular in comparison with that. Going on with the business of the old maps, one of the rather wonderful things was that in the sort of mid-90s, when this map was rediscovered, there had already been 2 publications by a terrific person called Mary Hesse, a Cambridge academic, and in fact somebody with a non-historical background. I think she was a chemist. She'd already published 2 significant articles about South Creake, about the field systems and the antiquity of the system of roads and ways in the parish. One in Norfolk Archaeology and another in the transactions of the English Place Name Society. And she was absolutely thrilled when she heard that a missing map had been found. And so her publication from 1998 in Norfolk Archaeology more or less makes redundant her 1992 publication, which is rather splendid. And now this, whether you will be able to see this or not, and I can't point it out very easily, but on this map, which comes from the 1998 publication, she has actually drawn a line, a series of zigzag lines, I think they are, separating out the 2 maps and the missing map. The missing one is the southern part of the parish, and the one that we're dealing with is the northern and western part of the parish. The first one actually includes details of the South Creake, the settlement, the enclosed street and houses, etc. I'll just go back one time there. On the one little detail there is south of the hill fort, there is a windmill, a little post mill. I hope you can see that. And the various roads coming up to joining the site. And the one coming in from the northeast is actually called on this map a Bloodgate. Now, in 1975, this air photograph was taken by my, by my ex-colleague, Derek Edwards, who for many years took photographs for the Norfolk Archaeological Unit. And this is sort of looking in a generally westerly direction. And you'll see in the middle of the hill fort, showing up here very largely as a crop mark with ditch, very little sign of the bank within it. There is some. And a ring ditch in the middle, which one would assume is going to have been surrounding a early Bronze Age round barrow. Slightly earlier than that, there was some interest been shown in this site because another ex-colleague, Andrew Lawson, carried out a contour survey. And this is really very intriguing because for one aspect of it, which is, and I can't point it out, but in the middle top part, you'll see some very close together north-south contour lines. These represent a bank, a north-south bank. And I will now attempt to go back once more to the detail. Oh, sorry, going the wrong way there. If you look on that, I hope you can see that there is a subdivision within the hill fort into various separate bits of land. And these are, of course, two little furlongs in the open field system of South Creake. There's a north-south little single holding on the west, and then there is east-west holdings and the rest of it forming another furlong. And at the top, the northern part, those east-west strips, if you want to call them that, go right as far as the rampart on the west side. So they're much longer than the ones to the south. When Mary Hesse looked at the various documents, field books, etc., in her early publication, it didn't really utterly make sense when she was presented with this, but it did later on, because it's very clear that what's happened here is that the western element, little furlong, originally went for the full length of the inside of the fort, and those three properties at the north have been extended. So the miniature change in the field system there, and what we're seeing on the contour survey is actually, strangely enough, the original headland between the east-west strips and the north-south strip, which is very, very curious because it doesn't exist very clearly on the contour survey further to the south. Can't explain that, I'm afraid. Very peculiar, but there it is. There's some sign of a headland to the south, but nothing like as much, which was something that's lasted for much less time than the other bit. It should have been to the north less obvious than it is to the south. Anyway, that interests me a great deal because one spends a lot of time looking at such things and trying to interpret them. Now, the next thing that was done was not long before the 2003 excavation. In fact, it was in the same year, and this is a magnetometer survey carried out by Bradford's geophysical system, and the boss man, Chris Gaffney, is a sort of leading geophysical person, and he's the guy who appears on so many of those, in fact, almost all of those time team programs, doing the Geophys, as it was called. Anyway, he did this, and things that I really would like to point them out, but I can't. The entrance is very clear, and as it was slightly less clear on the contour survey, and is also reasonably clear on the earthwork survey as well. You can see to what we say about just before 3 o'clock, there's an internal ditch or pit and a small gap in the ditch. I hope you can see that. That's a little causeway going over the ditch. That must be an entrance. And Chris Gaffney also wondered whether there were two other entrances on the west side, one at about between 9:30 to 10, I would say. That's the most clear one. Another one at about 8 o'clock, but they're much less obvious, and I think highly dubious because I can't really see either of those. So I think probably a single entrance. Then also, very curiously, you've got from near the ring ditch heading out two radial linear features heading towards the back of the rampart. I hope you can see those, forming a sort of almost like a triangular area. And those two linear things are what we used to call down dikes. They are ditch-like features, but they're very wibbly wobbly. They're not at all like most ancient ditches, which tend to be reasonably straight or gently curving. And I am beginning to wonder whether, in fact, these are not so much man-made features at all, but as gullies produced by water. Now, if they are, it means that the water is coming from somewhere. And one possibility has been put to me that it's possible that within the ring ditch there is in fact a spring. And of course, we don't remember springs are not constant. They're not there all the time. Sometimes they go. There are plenty of cases of totally dried out springs. And so it is possible that the ring ditch surrounds a spring, which would be absolutely fascinating if that was true. But the only way of finding that out is to do more and different method of geophysical survey, which is always a possibility, I think. The excavation was minimal, it must be said. As you know, excavation is very expensive. It was carried out by the extremely economic Norfolk Archaeological Unit. I think it was still called that at that stage. But even so, the money that was put up for this was not enormous. So the minimal amount was done. And it was also partly, I think, at that stage, people were still thinking very much that you mustn't do any excavation of anything that isn't going to be built on or gravels extracted or whatever. So to do research excavation had to be absolutely minimal. One trench was put across the ditch and bank, and I'll just go back again. Trench 1 in the picture there, you see, near the top. And that is, important. Obviously, there would have been a number of such trenches under normal circumstances, but there's only one here. And it's just as well because the ditch was enormously deep. It was recut once, a major recut on one occasion. Very little was left of the bank. We're looking there towards from the outside towards the inside, where that person is crouching down in front of a tape measure in the background. That's cut through what was left of the bank, almost nothing. Now, what I have forgot to mention, and I should say it now, of course, is that this site is in such a poor state, not because of modern agriculture. They're usually to blame. In this case, they're not. It's some early 19th century improvement and a desire to have more land that could be cultivated. So it was shoveled away. The bank is not there because it would have been shoveled into the ditch. And there was plenty of evidence for the relatively recent, i.e. early 19th century deposits of the bank into the ditch, with datable material being found with the shoveled in remains of the bank. There's one view of the trench. You can see the ranging pole at the bottom is a 2-meter pole, so very considerable depth. And that's just more or less the same view again, but you can see the bottom better. And of course, there had to be stepping for safety reasons. They couldn't just dig a straight hole like they would have done many years ago. As I say, the ditch was remodeled, recut on only one occasion that you can detect in a major way. The dating, some from the primary digging, there was a carbon-14 date, I think, on some charcoal, which gave a 3rd, 4th century BC element date to it, and very, very few finds. What there was in the lower deposits were potsherds of the Iron Age, not closely datable, but of the pre-Roman Iron Age, and one bit of human cranium. Now, going on to the ring ditch. So I'm still going there. There we are. the ring ditch is a rather different matter. And I think I'll just move this on. Oh yeah, sorry. There is the one section they were able to draw, and you can see the recut. It's slightly shallower, and it's slightly to the northeast of the previous one. And of that, the amount of deposit from the 19th century is the 24, 23, 19. All the top bit is what is bank that's been thrown back in. Now the ring ditch, a much smaller ditch, and again a very localized trench was put at right angles across it. It's V-shaped, as you can see, unlike that much more U-shaped and much bigger surrounding ditch of the fort itself. And a bit of confusion comes in here because the ceramics, and not a lot, potsherds, etc., all appeared to be Iron Age from top to bottom. But a carbon-14 date from near the base gave an early Bronze Age reading. And if it was a ring ditch, the likelihood is that it would be early Bronze Age. So there's something a bit odd going on there. It may be that they were just unlucky with the sample for the C14. They took something that was being charcoal that had been hanging around for 1,000 years by the time it got buried, which of course is possible. Or it could just simply be a mistake of some sort. Now, the third trench, and I won't go back to the slide, the third trench was to the north west of the ring ditch, and it did produce several small features, little pits, possible post holes, which contained a material of the Iron Age. Again, all pottery. A reasonable amount, possibly enough to indicate that there is occupation of some sort on this site. People were perhaps living there, or at least being quite active there at some time in the middle to late Iron Age. One of the big problems with doing such small excavations, small scale excavations, is you can't really say very much about what's going on in the majority of the site. However, there is quietness, that's the expression that's used, on the geophysical side of things. There were a few anomalies, apart from those wiggly ditches I was showing you, but not a great deal. And again, different soils respond in different ways to geophysical. So it's possible that there's positive evidence of buildings of one sort or another, which of course would all be of timber, did not show up because of the soil conditions. But in general, the case would seem to be that there is not an intense amount of activity in the Iron Age within the fort. That's backed up also by a field walking program that was carried out by the late Alan Davison just before the excavation, and done under very good soil conditions, which is a crucial thing, nicely weathered soil. Alan was a terrifically good finder of sites, and there was very little Iron Age material, just a matter of not even a handful of sherds, I think, from the whole site. Although that should say that this pottery does disintegrate rather easily when it's exposed to frost, etc. So it may be there's more than what was found there. And also we had a detector survey done, metal detector survey by David Fox, who's an amazing, capable person when it comes to finding things. And he found absolutely nothing that's datable to the Iron Age. That is not surprising because, of course, with detecting, you don't, unless you really want to spend months on any one field, turn your machine so it picks up iron. Most of the datable material in the Iron Age, of course, is not iron at all. It's copper alloy, metal things. Anyway, nothing copper alloy, silver or gold from any of the part of the Iron Age was discovered. There was a little bit of Roman material. There was one bit of early Anglo-Saxon thing, and a few bits of medieval. But we expect the medieval because we saw it was ploughed land almost certainly in the 13th century. Oh, there's a little plan and section of the ditch around the ring, the ring ditch. It is unfortunate that the trench did not go further to the north east into the interior, because there are several splodges showing up, probable pits and things showing up on the geophysical survey. And then this interpretation drawing by Sue White, for which she cooperated with the late Trevor Ashwin, they admit is really rather imaginative. There's the entrance at the bottom left. We're looking here sort of from the northeast. There's the entrance with a large ditch, or very short ditch or pit immediately within it, meaning that anybody entering the place has to turn and expose their flank as they come in, which is a pretty standard thing. Notice the ditch, the linear features forming the triangle that I pointed out has been straightened somewhat, and some of the wiggles in the two linears have been made into little sort of grovelets, I think, or grovettes of trees, because it is known that the Iron Age people, they were quite keen on groves. Then some roundhouses have been placed in the background there, just sort of representing what may have been the case. So there's no archaeological evidence for them. And also there are signs of a sort of a timber walkway around the top of the bank, but of course there's absolutely no evidence for that, because the bank was essentially not there, hasn't been there for a long time. And that's very loosely based on the excavated evidence from Warham. So it's probably fair enough to say the bank wasn't just simply a mound of earth. It would have been revetted probably at the rear and had some sort of walkway on it, maybe with a palisade, etc. So that's reasonably imaginative. The one thing I do worry about is if you look at the ring ditch in the middle, there's a causeway which comes out from it and then bisects the triangle. I could find no evidence of a causeway there in the geophysical report, absolutely none, although the excavation report does talk about a causeway. So that's a mystery to me. And if there was a causeway, it might suggest that the two vertical, the radial lines, and another faint curving line between them could have formed some different kind of area. But do look at the report by Kenneth Penn. It's excellent in all ways, apart possibly from this business of the causeway, which I don't understand. And that is in Norfolk Archaeology 1998. It's quite a short report, so do have a look. Now, trying to set the site in some sort of context is actually quite tricky. I looked at records for North Creake, South Creake, and Siderston, being the nearest places. And there's the Iron Age is very poorly represented. So in terms of sort of the immediate chronology, it's a tricky one. We don't know much about the surrounding area. If we go to Norfolk as a whole, you can see that it's the South Creek. I hope you can see that. Can you all see a little circle, red circle with South Creek written next to it? I don't know how visible things are from the back there. It's in an area where there are some finds, and not far away, as one comes into other parishes further, there are plenty, but there's a reasonably blank area in the highest bit of the so-called good sands. That's an area of lightish soils in northwest Norfolk. It's getting a little bit blank there. But these archaeological distribution maps are very misleading, because this is showing artifacts, finds of all sorts. And I can see several places where I've done field surveys and picked up bits of pottery, which appear as being very, very dense on this. And they're just potsherds and nothing else. So one potsherd gets a blob, and so would a village with 100 potsherds, 1,000 potsherds. So it's all a little bit misleading. but nevertheless, we have to show these because we haven't got much else to go on. So that's the sort of more or less everything known about the Iron Age, and includes, rather cheekily, possibly, 3 linear earthworks, which have been dated to the Iron Age for the sake of this map. But some people would date them to the post-Roman period. It shows how incredibly ignorant we still are of all sorts of things. You've got the Bitcham Ditch at Beecham Well, Barton Bendish, Narborough. You've got the Lawn Ditch, and you've got another small ditch near Ash Hill as well. And the only one that at this stage is dated is the Lawn Ditch. Even that is disputed after some excavation has been done. I personally do think it belongs to the Iron Age, but some people disagree with that, and the publication has come out to say that it's certainly post-Roman. But anyway, by the by, so there's little lines, you may have to ignore them a little bit. Other hill forts, so-called, in Norfolk. Here are some. Thetford Castle is perhaps the largest, perhaps the most obvious one. There's Creake as well, as you can see. And Warham, which I will say a bit more about, Hokum, Narborough. And in the middle, at the top, you can see, I hope, Taysborough, which probably should be taken off. Well, almost certainly should be taken off, because it is almost certainly not pre-Roman, but post-Roman. I'm going to show 1 or 2 shots using LiDAR, the old light detection and ranging system, which is where they're not photographs, they are images produced by laser beams, shot at the ground and bouncing back, and then timed, and see how long it takes to get back. Some of these are absolutely extraordinary, not particularly the ones I'm showing you, but I would recommend anybody who hasn't done this to go online and look at LiDAR pictures, where you can see, for example, hundreds of hectares of so-called envelope ploughing, which hasn't been done in this county, as far as I know, since the 70s at the latest, before they had reversible moldboards, reversible ploughs. They would do the system which produces an envelope-like shape to any rectangular field. Well, you can still see those, but if you go to fields where the LiDAR shows all this amazing earthwork, you will see absolutely nothing. The computers in this case are rather cleverer than we are. So anyway, this particular way of showing LiDAR, you see banks in white, so up dikes in white, and dips in black. So a pit will look like a black blob, or a circular bank, in this case, Warren with its 2 valar or whatever you want to call them, ramparts, 2 white lines. It's rather clearer, I think, than looking at most normal air photographs. And lots of other things showing up as well, as you see at the bottom there. Those very slight rectangular things are banks within the valley. They're banks next, almost certainly, to do with the drainage system. Geophysical survey was done of Warham not that long ago, 2012, by Michael de Bootman, using ground penetrating radar. No, sorry, no, it's not. It's magnetometer again, same system as Chris Gaffney used at South Creek. And there are a lot of features there, but everyone agrees these are in fact entirely geological. They're so-called stone stripes, the things that you can see a lot of the time where you've got chalk which has been weathered by water. There are a few blobs here and there that may be archaeological. And I'll say a tiny bit more about Warham in a second. One other site which has had absolutely nothing done to it, unlike Warham, where there have been 2 lots of excavation, 3 now, is this little place, perhaps the most obscure of all of them. This is Narborough, and again, some damage in the same way as Warham. Again, interesting enough to its west part. That's to do with landscaping of a lake as part of Narborough Hall's sort of small park around it. This one is perhaps reasonably similar, although much smaller than South Creake. It's only got 1 bank and 1 ditch. You can see a very slight so-called counterscarp bank, a little bank on the outer part, but you often get that as well, which probably existed as well at South Creake. So nothing has been done to this one at all. There are, I think, records of 2 potsherds being found in molehills or something like that, which for a county with not very many of such sites, you think something might have been done. If you're in Wiltshire or somewhere where every other hill has a hill fort on it, you can imagine there being some that haven't been looked at. Here it is rather bizarre. And then this extraordinary site at Hokum, which is in the middle of the salt marsh, and it's on a natural bluff of sand and gravel, where one used to be able to walk down to the beach from the edge of Hokum Park. It's all closed off now. As one looked to the left, as you walk towards the beach, you can see this natural mound, and actually you're looking at the earthworks as well. It's complicated by the fact that there's an enormous drop down to the marsh on the west side. The whiteness there on the west side may in fact it isn't really bank so much as and this is a complicated thing, but where you get a huge drop, the way in which this has been filtered, it produces a whiteness next to it. So it's a bit misleading. Nevertheless, there is, and I think I've got no, I haven't put on the earthwork survey, so do forgive me. The earthwork survey of this is to be found in the Earthworks of Norfolk volume of East Anglian Archaeology, which is online. So Hokum, very curious. I think 2 Iron Age potsherds have been found, and I think 1 medieval. That's all, but unexcavated. Thetford, an entirely different matter. There has been excavation there in 1962 by the Norfolk Research Committee, and again outside what is now considered to be the castle, but certainly part of it, by the Archaeological Unit, Norfolk Archaeological Unit in 1975, and a number of watching briefs have gone on as well. What we'll have to say about this is that it looks as though there's been an enormous amount of destruction, but actually, and that everything's been piled up in a great mound. Well, actually, that great mound is a Norman motte, the circular thing there with a great ditch around it. Then there are two lots of ditch and a counterscarp bank as well. Two banks, 2 ditches, and an outer counterscarp. Very, very complicated, this site, because the original excavation in 62 is a bit, so it's really quite well done, but it's very difficult to interpret. And there undoubtedly has been a considerable remodeling in the Norman period. And the fact that the ditches just seem to stop where they do stop is all a bit worrying. But sufficient work has been done with watching briefs and borehole monitoring to show that the ditches and banks ran down to the river Thet, which I hope you can see snaking around the bottom, or at least to a slightly earlier line of the river Thet. So what we've got here is not what was always thought to be an oval enclosure, and in 62 that's what they thought. It's not an oval enclosure at all. It's a curved enclosure with about almost half of the enclosure being formed by the river. So this is like the opposite of a hill fort. It's more like a riverside promontory fort, if you want the technical jargon. It's an extraordinary site, and made really much more interesting, but far more difficult to interpret by this terrific motte. And I took that shot from Google Street View. Actually, I realized that all the slides I've had of this site, like most of my other slides, I no longer have because I'm a retired personage. So just amazing at what you can get off Google. It's quite a good shot, really. There's the motte with the bank, inner bank, enlarged in the Norman period, on the right. There's enough evidence from this site, from the excavations, to show that there is pretty strong amount of Iron Age, middle Iron Age and late Iron Age, mostly middle here. And it is even possible that the great site up on the hill above Thetford, the Gallows Hill site, the so-called Boudicca's Palace bit that Tony Gregory excavated, may have been a sort of successor of this. But that's a tricky one. The Iron Age to Roman overlap period, that first century when so much datable material, certainly metalwork, one has to put down as first century BC, first century AD. It can't be fixed more closely than that. So there's actually quite a useful map. This is called the end of prehistory. What it does show is a number of rectangular enclosures, which not all, but most of which have been dated to the very late Iron Age. And interestingly enough, it misses off one, it's a mistake, I think, which is within a stone's throw of the great circular thing at Warham. And I may have a picture, I think I have got a picture of it coming up next, we hope. Yes, there's the camp, and Warham Burrows, very, very close to it. It is just about a stone's throw. A destroyed site, unfortunately, but has actually received a bit of excavation, again by the Norfolk Research Committee back in the 1950s. And all is known about these sites has been very brilliantly published, not by the excavator, but again by Tony Gregory in an East Anglian Archaeology volume in 1986, again available online. One other site, which does not appear on either of these maps, either the Iron Age one or the Iron Age Roman overlap map, is this extraordinary site at Whiten, very close to Warham. And I hope you can see the faint outlines of a ploughed out bank, and the slight signs at the top and on to the left or west of a ditch without it. This is a huge site in comparison with most of them that we've been looking at. It is in fact 8 3/4 hectares, which compares with the 3.5 of South Creake. It's a very big site. Again, it's sort of roughly circular, less circular than either Creake or Warham, but it's sort of going that way. And there are references to this being upstanding in the, I think it's late 17th or 18th century. But it was hardly visible at all from the ground when Andrew Lawson again excavated back in, when was it, 1974, and promptly published in only the second volume of East Anglian Archaeology in 1976. And what is extraordinary about this is that it seems without doubt this is either very late Roman or post-Roman, sub-Roman maybe even, because the stratigraphy was such that it showed that 6 burials which were dated to the mid to late 3rd century, were stratigraphically earlier than the bank, what was left of the bank. And everybody seems to agree with that. So I'm absolutely shocked, really. I'm not shocked because I've known this for years. I'm absolutely depressed by the fact that no further work has been done here. And it's very interesting that in Lawson's report, he doesn't just say, I hope further work will be done. He says, when further work takes place, blah, blah, blah. And the idea was that there would be, what he did in 74 was really just a trial work, and further work would be done because the site was being steadily getting worse condition from modern agriculture. But it never happened for one reason or another. And this is another place that one could go to, perhaps before, I would like to think, before going to Narborough, which is in no way threatened. This is still potentially arable, and do some more work here. Find out what's going on the inside. There's awful lot of Roman material within the enclosure, great deal. It's part of what has been described as a Roman town, but the dating is so late that it's become rather fascinating. Now we've got a place that belongs to the Norfolk Archaeological Trust. This is Taysborough. And actually, this is a much clearer picture, again, LiDAR, than you ever get from an earthwork survey or a geophysical or anything else. It does show up the bank remarkably well. Again, where you've got the scarp down to the valley, it's thoroughly confused by the steepness. And so whiteness is appearing there when it shouldn't do. But so ignore the lower part below the sort of east-west ditchy thing, and look at the rest of it. There is something going on there without doubt. What is not often mentioned in the case of Taysborough is it is possible, and I say only possible, that it's actually one of a pair of enclosures that flank the River Tass and a tributary. That's just the tide map. It's the one marked 71. It's slightly pinker color in the top left. Is the other place. Actually, it's now Tharston, parish of Tharston. That's where you'll get it on the Norfolk Heritage Explorer site. But it was Hapton. The parish of Hapton has been subsumed. Tharston to the bottom left. That's why you've got 3 different colours of tithe maps so brilliantly stitched together. One site which, until recently, I don't think anybody has suggested had anything to do with the Iron Age, is that at Moot Hill, Wymondham. And again, that kind of getting repetitive here. There's absolutely no work of an investigative nature has been done, apart from an earthwork survey, single bank, surrounding ditch. This is rather smaller than all the other sites. This is only about 2/3 of a hectare within the bank. That's to say, comparing with almost 3.5 at Creake. So it is a small site. I think when I say we, I and colleagues have assumed that this is a Norman period ring work. It's the other version of the sort of slightly maybe quicker to produce temporary castle as opposed to the Motte and Bailey. It takes a bit more effort. Whether it's a ring work or not, we have at least one other certainly Norman period ring work in the county, and that's at the Red Castle at Thetford. I've been moaning on about lack of excavation all the time. It was very, very good to see 2003 work going on at Warham. There's a slightly blurred photograph. There's some people, they're working so hard that it's blurred. They're moving too much. Terrific stuff. There should be much, much more work like that done, I think. And for those, any of you who haven't been to Warham, you should go there. It's a very beautiful place. And I imagine by now it's recovered from the excavation, is looking beautiful again. And finally, I said, when I was asked to do this, I actually wrote back, said, yes, I will talk about Bloodmore Hill, not Bloodgate Hill. And of course, Bloodmore Hill is an extremely well-known Anglo-Saxon site excavated in the late 90s by the Cambridge Archaeological Unit, and it's close to Lowestoft. It's now in the parish of Colville, not Carlton Fort, but Carlton Colville, and near the excavation, which is a major significance for 6th, 7th century Anglo-Saxon archaeology, both burials and settlement, there was a mound destroyed in the 18th century, and I will attempt to read this out. This is from something called the East Anglian Daily Times, which is apparently something to do similar to the Eastern Daily Press. At Bloodmore Hill in Gisleham, actually, it was a meeting of 3 parishes, one of which was Carlton Colville and Gisleham, and wherever the other one is, I can't remember. At Bloodmore Hill in Gisleham, near Lowestoft, it is said that a terrible battle was fought between locals and the Romans, although the site has also been found to be a high-status Saxon settlement and burial ground. Legend has it that thousands met their death in this peaceful Suffolk village, leaving the ground soaked with blood and a hill created from corpses. It was here that several years ago, a man walking in the area heard the sound of screaming, of swords clashing, and of battle on a misty night. As quickly as the sound appeared, it disappeared, in the same way as I am going to now.